Do you want to feel more calm when it comes to conflict with your partner? Over the last decade, I've worked with over 200 couples, and I've noticed these three common traps that couples tend to fall in when they're in conflict. So today I'm going to show you the exact same strategies that I've used with hundreds of couples to help them feel more calm and also emotionally safe during conflict. So the three common mistakes that couples often make is firstly, that they start the conversation at the wrong time. Secondly, they stay in the conversation when they shouldn't. And thirdly, they don't make a repair after the conflict ends. So firstly, choosing the right time for the conversation is really important. You'll often hear people say things like, there's no right time to have a difficult conversation. And look, they're right to some degree. There is no perfect time to have a difficult conversation, but there is definitely a wrong time. And what I'm talking about here is that when we try and have these conversations in the heat of the moment, when we're flooded, or maybe it's that we're raising the conversation in times that we're just not able to communicate effectively. So it may be, for example, at the end of a busy week or when we're really time poor. So we've got this tiny window of time, which doesn't really allow us to give the conversation the attention it deserves. And we're both feeling time pressured. So really, really important that you choose a time where you're both able to come to that conversation in a relatively calm place, where you're both able to have had some time to think about that conversation before you enter it, and where you both have the time to really give that conversation the attention it deserves. So what does this look like on a practical level? So when you want to initiate a conversation with your partner and you know it's going to be a kind of sensitive topic, then it's really important not to just suddenly spring this conversation on them. You want to give them some warning. So you want to be able to say to them, hey, I really want to talk to you about X. When would be a good time for us to have that conversation? So let's say you've decided to have that conversation on a Saturday morning and you've chosen that time because you have a fairly big window. So from sort of 9 to 1 o'clock, the kids are off doing activities and it's just you and your partner in the house. Having such a large window of time is really beneficial because life happens. So maybe that particular morning, getting the kids out of the house was an absolute disaster. You're both exhausted, you're both stressed. You still have enough time to say, hey, let's not jump into this straight away. Let's go off and just have a moment to debrief on our own. Have a moment to go for a walk, maybe do some breathing exercises, do some meditation, do some yoga, whatever it is that brings you back to a calmer state before you enter that conversation. So this is really key because you're setting that conversation up for success. The second big mistake that couples often make, and I see this all the time, is that they stay in the conversation when they shouldn't. So what I mean by this is when couples are emotionally flooded or they go into what we call a state of physiological arousal, this is not a good time to communicate. The reason for this is because in this state of physiological arousal, we're having actual physiological changes in our body. So that means things like our heart rate goes up, we may be feeling more tense in our body. There's a whole range of physical symptoms which I won't go into. But the important ones that I want to highlight is that it really changes the way that we process and communicate information. So this front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, isn't operating in the way that it normally would. What this looks like in a couple context is that we may be more reactive, we tend to scan for the negatives, we lose our sense of humor. So all of these things tend to affect positive communication. So what we will find is that usually at least one partner will want to stay in the interaction. So in that moment, they have this overriding need to feel heard and understood by their partner. The problem with this is that you are not going to feel heard and understood when either or both of you are flooded and are in that state of physiological arousal. We just cannot communicate effectively. So firstly, you just simply cannot meet that need. So there's kind of no point really in staying in the interaction until we can come out of that state of physiological arousal. The second thing is when we stay in that conversation, even when we are in that state of physiological arousal, this is when we tend to do a lot of damage to our relationship. So because as that we're in that reactive state, we may say really hurtful things to our partner. And now we've got a whole bunch of other problems that we need to address in our relationship outside of the issue that we came to talk about in the first place. So what do you want to do instead? You want to become really familiar with your own cues of when you are flooded, or when you are in that state of physiological arousal. You want to pick that up as early as possible, and then you want to take a break. So when you take a break, you want to make sure that it's at least 20 minutes. You want to make sure that you're not thinking about the argument, because otherwise you're staying in that state of physiological arousal and you come back ready to defend your position, rather than to hear and understand your partner's experience and share your own. The next thing we want to make sure is that we're telling our partner where we're going and when we'll come back. And really importantly, that we do actually come back to the conversation. The way that we take that break is really important. So as I said, one person may want to stay in the interaction. So it's really important to understand what they need to hear in order to be able to take that break. They may need a little bit of comfort and reassurance from the other partner. And then we want to come back and have that conversation when we're not in that flooded state. So if we come back and we're like, one or both of us are still in that state of physiological arousal, we take another break. And then the third big mistake that couples often make is that they don't make a repair after the conflict. Conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen in every relationship. There's going to be moments where you don't agree on things. And sometimes the conflict just isn't going to go well. And we're also going to have moments where we have just miscommunications or misunderstandings in our relationship. When that happens, we think about it kind of like being a rupture in our relationship. And we want to be able to repair that relationship as quickly as possible. Because when we're in that state of rupture, this is when we start to think and focus on all the negatives in the relationship. We think about all the things that aren't working. We start to feel super alone. There's a lot of intense feelings that we can have in that moment of disconnection while we're kind of waiting for the relationship to be repaired, waiting for that security from our partner to know that we will get through this together. So what we want to do is we want to make a repair as quickly as possible. When we make a repair, and this is where couples quite often get stuck, we are not solving the problem. Sure, sometimes a repair may involve some kind of solution, but we don't want to wait till we're ready to talk about the problem again or ready to come up with solutions for the problem, because that may be some time, if ever. So we want to be able to basically say to our partner, you and our relationship are more important than any problem we will face. We will get through this together. What does a repair look like? So this is different for each partner. So it's really important that you check in with your partner and ask them, what does it look like to you if I'm making an effective repair? What is it you want to feel? What are the words that you want to hear from me? Get them to paint you a really clear picture. Does it involve some kind of physical touch? Like, you might want me to say this and hold my hand or reach out and give me a hug. You need to get a really clear understanding of what a repair looks like for your partner. And then you want to try that out, see how it lands, and then get some feedback. Adjust it and do it again. Because if we haven't done repairs in the past, we may actually not even fully understand ourselves what it is that we need in that moment. So it can be a bit of trial and error. But the key here is that we want to be making those repairs as soon as possible. Remembering that if we are in that state of physiological arousal, it's best to come out of that state of physiological arousal first. So using the take a break strategy, taking some time to regulate, and then coming back. When we come back, if we're not ready to solve the problem, we still make that repair. So we still repair the relationship, because we're saying to our partner, this is more important than anything we will face. We're going to get through this together.
If you want to learn more of these unique communication skills that you need to have greater connection and intimacy in your relationship, watch this next video now.